In the farthest reaches of the Orion Arm, there's a saying, Terran may not be the strongest or the most technologically advanced, but they are relentless. Cross them, and they'll chase you to the ends of the galaxy. This was precisely what Baric, a seasoned bartender of the Rim City Cantina, was trying to explain to a group of ambitious Vleen mercenaries. You don't get it, Baric growled, his mandibles clicking with irritation. Terran are born hunters. They're not like us, calculating and patient. They're driven by something primal, something you don't want to mess with. They don't have bio-enhancements like the Drans or the mind-link abilities of the Xylans, but if you wrong a Terran, they'll track you across star systems, and they won't stop until they've evened the score. One of the Vleens, a bulky, multi-limbed brute named Kag, chuckled darkly as he sipped his shimmering blue drink, his skin flicked with shades of mockery. You really think a bunch of Terran in their junker ships and primitive slug throwers can take on someone like us? We've got exo-armor, plasma rifles, and warships that can punch through planetary shields. Baric's single eye, his other replaced with a glowing cybernetic, narrowed as he recalled a painful memory. That's what they want you to think, he said, his voice low and gravelly. I lost my eye to a Terran once. A scrawny little thing barely out of its youngling years. They burned it out with a weapon I didn't even see coming. I was lucky they didn't kill me outright. The Vleens laughed, but it was half-hearted. Something in Baric's tone unnerved them, even if they wouldn't admit it. One of them, a wiry female named Tala, glanced around the darkened bar, noticing for the first time how empty it was. So, what are you saying, old-timer? We should be afraid? Baric leaned in close, his voice barely a whisper. I'm saying that when you're dealing with Terran, don't take them head-on. Wait until they leave. Give them no reason to come after you. If you think it's worth the credits to risk it, fine, but do yourself a favor, don't underestimate them. Not ever. Ignoring Baric's warning, the mercenaries downed their drinks, paid their tab, and swaggered out into the neon-lit streets of Rim City, eager to prove themselves against the galaxy's most infamous predators. Hours later, Baric was alone in his bar, nursing a strong drink. His mind drifted back to the day he lost his eye. He had been part of a crew that raided a Terran outpost, expecting little resistance. Instead, they encountered something far more dangerous, a Terran survivor, one who had made it their mission to take down every last member of the crew. They don't forget, Baric muttered to himself as he refilled his glass. And they sure as void don't forgive. Just as he was about to close up for the night, the bar's door slid open, and a figure cloaked in shadows entered. Baric tensed but relaxed when the newcomer ordered a drink in a low, gravelly voice. It wasn't until the stranger took off their hood that Baric realized who he was dealing with, a Terran. The Terran's eyes were sharp, and his expression was unreadable. They'll be dead by morning, the Terran said, as though discussing the weather. Baric gulped. Who? The Vleens who just left here? The Terran replied, taking a slow sip of the dark amber liquid Baric had poured. They made the mistake of crossing a Terran enclave. We hunters, you see, never stop until we've taken down our prey. Baric shuddered as the Terran continued, his tone almost conversational. They think they're invincible with their fancy tech and big guns, but Terran have a way of turning the tables. We're persistent. We've survived on one of the most hostile planets in the galaxy. We don't need the best technology. We just need time and a reason. The Terran finished his drink and stood to leave. Before he walked out, he turned back to Baric. You did them a kindness, warning them. Not that it'll make a difference. Baric watched the Terran disappear into the night, his heart heavy with dread. He knew, as surely as he knew his own name, that the mercenaries wouldn't last the night. The Terran's words echoed in his mind, we don't need the best technology. We just need time and a reason. And for the Terran, revenge was reason enough. The Rim City Cantina was eerily silent after the Terran left. Baric couldn't shake the unease settling into his bones. He'd been around long enough to recognize the difference between idle bravado and a genuine threat. The Terran's words had the weight of certainty, and Baric knew that meant trouble was on its way. Out in the streets, Kag and his crew swaggered through the neon-lit alleys, their confidence bolstered by the credits they just secured for their latest job. They were on their way to the docking bay, eager to return to their ship and celebrate their latest haul. Tala, still buzzing from the drinks, slapped Kag on the back. That old bartender sure knows how to spin a tale, huh? She laughed. Terran, of all things. What a joke. Kag grunted in agreement, but there was a sliver of doubt in his eyes. Yeah, well, he's been around longer than we have. Seen a lot more, too. We'd be wise to stay alert. Tala rolled her eyes but didn't argue. She had to admit, something about the way the bartender had spoken made her skin crawl. As they neared the docking bay, the Vleens heard a faint hum, barely perceptible beneath the city's usual din. Kag paused, his multiple arms tensing as he tried to pinpoint the source of the sound. The others noticed his sudden stillness and followed suit, their predatory senses kicking in. The hum grew louder, and before they could react, the bay's lights flickered, casting long, ominous shadows across the walls. "What the frag is that?" one of the mercenaries muttered, his voice trembling. Without warning, the bay doors slammed shut behind them, trapping them inside. Panic set in as the Vleens realized they were cut off from escape. Tala spun around, her plasma rifle drawn, but there was nothing to shoot at, just darkness and the low, relentless hum. Then they saw it, emerging from the shadows, a single figure clad in dark armor, moving with the precision and confidence of a predator who had already won. It was the Terran. "Where do you think you're going?" The Terran's voice cut through the air like a knife, sharp and cold. Cag snarled, raising his weapon. "We're not afraid of you, Terran. We faced worse than your kind." The Terran didn't flinch. Instead, he raised his own weapon, an old-fashioned projectile launcher, and fired a single shot. The bullet ricocheted off the wall, striking one of the mercenaries square in the chest. He crumpled to the ground, gasping as his life drained away. Panic erupted among the Vleens. They fired wildly, their plasma bolts lighting up the bay in bursts of blue and green, but the Terran was already moving. He weaved through their fire with a grace that belied his species' reputation as inferior. One by one, the mercenaries fell, unable to keep up with the Terran's relentless assault. Cag was the last one standing, his heart pounding in his chest as he faced down the Terran. He was cornered, his back against the wall. "Why?" Cag shouted, desperation edging into his voice. "What did we ever do to you?" The Terran approached slowly, his dark eyes locking onto Cag's. "You made the mistake of thinking you could cross a Terran colony and walk away. That's not how it works." Cag's mind raced, trying to find a way out, but there was none. He had heard the stories, the warnings, but he had dismissed them as exaggerations. Now, staring down the barrel of the Terran's gun, he realized the truth. Terran were relentless because they had to be. They had been forged in the crucible of a harsh, unforgiving world, and they had learned to survive against all odds. The Terran's finger tightened on the trigger. "We don't forgive. We don't forget." The last thing Cag saw was the flash of the muzzle before everything went dark. Back at the Rim City Cantina, Baric was cleaning up when the door slid open again. He tensed, expecting trouble, but it was just a hooded figure, the same one who had visited earlier. The Terran walked up to the bar, silent as a shadow, and placed a small object on the counter. "A data chip for your trouble," the Terran said, his voice devoid of emotion. Baric picked up the chip, glancing at it with a mix of curiosity and caution. "What is this?" "Payment," the Terran replied. "It's worth more than what those mercs would have given you. Consider it a token of appreciation for not warning them too well." Baric looked up, but the Terran was already walking away, disappearing into the night. The bartender shuddered as he pocketed the chip. He had